we talked about this before. Is it a design flaw if it is designed kind of with one ideal outcome in mind or one path in mind, but you could also get through it this way? That's kind of like microtransactions. The main problem that people have is when it's the pay to win. If it's like, hey, I want to level up quicker, then sure, you can take the shortcut. Or you want to do this really, really hard. What if you did like grounded level on Last of Us? The game is meant to be played by just, different, levels of difficulty. I chose a really hard way to do it, not the ideal way. Is that bad? Is that a design flaw?
That's a positive. Giving players more options is always a positive, I would think.
But in the case of BioShock, if you have no way to telegraph in advance to the player, you're choosing a hard choice.
Yeah.
That's the difference between opting into the difficult path versus just luck of the draw.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I like Deus Ex was famous.
I really thought you said Dave Sex.
Dave Sex.
Classic
Dave
Dave.
Sex.
Guy got a lot of shit in high school.
Deus Ex.
But also got laid a lot.
Deus Ex was.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Was
sorry.
Sort of famous as
We're
this
already
kind of
talking
RPG.
over Austin. I just want to point that out to all the commenters
again.
on YouTube. You're welcome. That's just for you.
It's a good bit.
Go on, Austin.
Beautiful.
Go ahead.
So we're so on brand
Austin,
today.
go ahead.
You know what I've always thought was interesting about Deus Ex was that there were kind of easy options built in.
I need to work
on my
paths you
of,
could go through and you get different difficulties.
I need to work on
for like
my
50 episodes now, and it still tickles us.
I need
I
to
have a
work on
funny
my
story about
Alana
Deus Ex. I just want to just
face.
interrupt.
Oh, more respect to likes curry.
My Jim Krasinski look at the camera.
Austin, go ahead. Deus Ex.
I don't think I think it's risky. I like better when I was the host and I could mute people. So yes, in that game, famously,
Which one?
Deus Ex, without the machina, but implied.
The first?
You
You mean the first one?
Yes, the original,
The OG.
2000 or 2001, I think. 2000.
Space Odyssey.
That game gave you obviously widely divergent options. It gave you the like, do you want to be a hacker who sneaks into the base? Do you want to be a tank who like gets a rocket launcher and blows the door off and fights all the guys when the alarm goes off? Do you want to be the like stealth ninja, go through the air ducts with a tranquilizer, like crossbow, blah blah blah? And they all came with their own ramifications. There wasn't one that was like, oh, you chose the one that's insanely hard and it's like impossible to do and you wouldn't have known that. The aspiration was there's total agency. Some might be harder for you. Like you might, if you're a shooter person, the tank thing is for you. But if you're like, I'm all about stealth, then so you can like lean into the thing that you're naturally better at or that
Dishonored,
you like better.
right? Like, which would be inspired by Deus Ex anyway and Thief. Where I guess part of it is that
Well, the same team as well.
yeah, players get to choose the difficulty. Like you're choosing every single level how difficult you want it to be. Like if you play through Dishonored and you're trying to get the like least amount of rats possible, you are opting into the hardest difficulty without it being like literally the AI is harder. It's every single mission you're making the choice by.
I was just playing Frostpunk. Did you ever play that? From the 11-bit guys who made this War of Mine.
Beautiful game.
Yeah, it's really great, and they straight up tell you in the UI, like it'll go, not enough of your people have warm housing, and so here are 3 objectives, and it shows you the UI makes explicitly clear this is the harder one, therefore the highest reward. Like if you promise to the townspeople, I'm going to heat every home within 2 days. The game is telling you, you've chosen the harder thing, but obviously it comes with a higher reward. And if you fail on your promises to your people, the penalty for doing so is also a lot harder.
How similar is Frostpunk to this War of Mine?
Tonally, emotionally, they're very similar. They're like the most depressing, agonizing, sort of like staring the apocalypse in the face. But this War of Mine, there's Frostpunk is kind of overtly like a city builder in the context
it's a city
of
survival game, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very small element of that to this War of Mine as you like soup up your house. That you have to kind of like, go find supplies and reinforce your doors and blah, 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 and get food and whatever. And this game has all of that, but you're also constantly like you're sending out, scouts, and you're figuring out your food supply. You're trying to decide, do I invest in this resource or that resource to the exclusion of others? Do I let in, like, one of the things that I absolutely love that this War of Mine also does a variation of, that's just such a brilliant, like, how do you lead in a time of absolute catastrophic disaster, is it goes, refugees have found your town. There are 60 of them, but 40 of them are sick. Do you let in everyone? Do you let in only the healthy? Do you let in no one? And all of those have wildly different impacts. And it's one of those where you're like, I only take healthy people. Sorry, the rest of you can go fucking die, because we're like, you will end up killing all of us if we have to take care of you. And like the game puts in such sharp relief. This War of Mine did too. I was blown away at how that game felt so dreary.
I would say that is one of the most depressing games I've ever played, and that I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. But when you play through it and you're making those choices and you're thinking about the like similar realities of those situations, it is fucking depressing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that this War of Mine, obviously the premise being that you're a civilian in a war zone just trying to figure out how to stay alive, whereas Frostpunk is this, like, the world has ended and everyone's just trying to live. So that puts the moral decisions in an interestingly different frame of references, because it's like, this War of Mine imagines that to me it doesn't suggest that the world has ended. It's you're trapped in an active war zone.
Yeah.
And so like when you come across a house that has like the elderly couple who just want to be left alone, and you're like, I'm gonna murder you for your food. Like that is a pretty unambiguously immoral choice in the context of a game like this War of Mine. Whereas in Frostpunk, the equivalence that they make, I feel like it invites you to feel more easily justified when you're like, what's the end game though? It is the end of the world. I don't know. I love these games that put you in this
similar type of thing, like similar, and it is an interesting way to make things difficult. Like I said, without it just being the AI is harder. Like it's Papers, Please is hard, not only because you can fail really easily, but also because every choice you have to make is a moral one that's actually challenging.
And it gets really hard if you try to be good. Like if you try to
Please, yeah.
Yeah, if you try to, right? If you try to be like a moral actor, and it's the same with these others too.
Yeah, that's also kind of in the conceit of the game as well, right?
Oh yeah, that's the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a simple game, so good.
It's so good.
Did you guys ever play the drug game that was out in the 90s? That was like this simple, you were a drug dealer.
I don't know, Troy. I was born in 93.
Well, this
I
is like
I would have been 7.
You were 6. You were playing games.
You encouraged me to play drug games as a 6-year-old, Troy.
Seems appropriate.
Someone please shout out in the comments
in Australia,
about this game.
No less.
It was, oh yeah, no.
Sadly, we won't get those comments in real time.
I'm gonna wait.
In the live chat, let us know.
I'm gonna hold out.
Super chat.
Any minute now.
They're gonna jump in.
No, I think we've talked about this before, where there was this great game and there was a 90s
drug dealer video game. I'm gonna just
play a drug dealer.
Yeah, you were a drug dealer, and you wanted to buy. It's basic economy.
Drug Wars.
Drug Wars. There you go.
Buy low, sell high.
How about this? Initial release year, 84.
No.
Oh, I don't have an excuse for not playing Drug Wars.
This is a DOS game.
They didn't change the AI or the UI of it at all. It was just like
the player begins with $2,000 and 100 spaces in their trench coat. I actually feel like I played this.
I played the shit out of this game.
It's a turn-based strategy game?
Yeah. So you would be like, okay, well, you sold
the most drugs to pay off a loan shark.
Yep. And what you can do is you can go back and borrow more money. You're like, man, meth is really cheap right now. So you can go buy that meth cheap, but then you now own a loan shark and they could come after you if you don't pay them off in enough time, or you could accrue too much interest, or the cops can find out where you are. They raid and they steal everything that you have.
Imagine if you went and made that now and actually like could put in the narrative design and like, you'd end up with like Breaking Bad the game. You could make a really interesting. I couldn't. That wouldn't work with White Brand at all. But like, well, it just doesn't fit like our style.
No,
of
I
game.
get that.
But, like,
From the creator of
Thomas was a drug dealer.
Thomas was a drug dealer. It doesn't really work.
Thomas
I just realized
I'm just a bit too square. That's what I'm saying. I'm a bit too square.
I just realized why I know this game. This was a game that was it's like betrays its 80s origin as a DOS game. I played this on my calculator.
What?
Like, you know, those graphing calculators
yeah.
that you needed for
So
like
hot
physics
for you right
class.
now.
He's not from the generation that played games on a calculator.
What a lost time that is.
I didn't even know you could do that.
The only game that I played was,
So
hey,
before-
watch this, 80085. Look what I did. Those are the games that I
I
made.
did that one a
before,
lot.
like, before everyone had a computer, Alana, we would often have the graphics calculators at school, which would have like a rubbish. It was almost like a Tamagotchi screen, like a really low quality screen, but you could
Isn't that
play
an
games
early
on
George Lucas movie?
Well, I did grow up without a computer for a
86 was the
while.
one I had, actually.
I did have a fancy calculator, but they didn't have fucking video games on them. How did schools allow that?
They didn't. They definitely didn't allow drug wars, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you were.
Little Austin was a rebel. He was
says
playing
Drug
by
Wars
his own rules.
Was inspired by a game called Star Trader. Has anyone heard of that?
Yeah.
Star Trader,
Trader? Probably my better version.
1974.
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
It's like a prototypical space trading game.
It says text-based basic game Star Trader Drug Wars was originally an MS-DOS program created by John E. Dell in 1984. This is
Man.
actually very interesting. The player begins
know
with
it's-
$2,000, 100 spaces in their trench coat, and no weapons.
It's,
I would
it
make
sounds.
that. I might have to make that as a hobby game and release it under a different name.
Just
If there's
or
a
don't
anonymous
do Drug Wars. Do something else. What's something that you could be really nice about? Puppy Wars.
Cupcakes. Puppy Wars.
You're giving
no,
people-
that would no. Puppy Wars would get really dark really fast. That would work.
What was that teddy bear game?
Back there? What?
It was like,
But there's a bed right there. Why is your head? What? I don't know what's wrong with him. He's broken.
oh well, not broken.
Visual podcast, everybody.
Yeah,
Gotta make sure this audio
this
is
week it
dog.
is.
The audio listeners get to decide which of the three of us you were referring to.
Yeah.
It's
True.
just
Why
that.
does he do
Look
that
at
with
what's
his
wrong
weird
with
He
head?
is on mic. He's broken.
I legitimately have not thought
sorry.
about games on the calculator in 20 plus years until this moment, and it was just like a flood of, because you had the classics like Tetris and all those had been ported as well. They were very friendly to
What
this.
did you
but
I bet
download
Alana
them?
didn't even have
How
to take a
did
floppy
you-
disk with her in her backpack to
I
school.
did
every
have
day.
floppy disks. I was
did have a
in
floppy
floppy
disk
disk
at school.
era, so I did
Oh,
do
okay.
floppy disks. I submitted
okay,
assignments on
okay.
floppies. I'm not. Not.
I played Prince of
understand.
No, when I was a
Persia.
kid, you had one floppy disk, and that was your floppy disk. You didn't submit because they were too expensive to
we had
give it
multiple.
to a teacher. No.
No, you erased it.
You had one. You
Wow.
had one disc, and you reused it. Yeah. Back in
/ erase. Like, oh man,
Prince of
I
Persia.
I remember
remember.
I had a little yellow plastic wallet for it, so it would.
So
stay
I
safe in my
actually
backpack.
never had the.
Oh my god! No, again, not thought about that for 20 years.
I never had the floppy disk.
5.5.
They were never floppy, and I
No.
just assumed that was not a real thing until someone was like, "No, that's why it's called a floppy disk. They weren't always solid." And
used
I
to
was
be.
like,
I remember the vinyl one. Like, if you go watch War Games, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna play a new game," and he pulls out this fucking foot-long disc and slams it shut, and
"That was real?
That was
I
100%.
assumed that was fictional."
To save us
like-
the comments as well, it is a floppy disk. It was just in a hard case, the one you had.
True story.
Just to save us like the 200
It was
comments.
5
The
and a
disc
quarter,
itself was
3.5,
floppy.
right? Isn't that right? 5 and a quarter, 3.5.
It's 3.5 on the small. Was it 5 1/4? That sounds right. I might be wrong, but yeah.
Yeah. 3.5 was the tick, tick, tick. And then what about mini
Because it was the
discs?
5.5 was the one that we had in our the BBC Micro, which was socialized computing. There you go. So every school got like a cheap computer, basically, when I was a kid.
5.5 and 3.5.
How
Yeah.
did
Was it 5.5 and
get
3.5?
the games
No.
onto the calculators?
So it says.
Say again.
How'd you download
How did the
that
games
shit?
get onto the calculators?
You'd have to.
You
enter
had
them,
to
right?
get a. You had to. Well, that was one option. You could actually literally replicate the code. That some kids did that, but there also was at some point those calculators did have like a cable that you could.
Oh, so you could
the
like
sort of
trade.
Tether?
Like a link cable?
Yeah, like some ultra precursor to a USB cable, essentially.
But you got to remember back then as well, these games were like 200 lines of code. So you used to get magazines and you could kind of type them in from the back of magazines. I remember doing that as a
Honestly,
kid.
programmers these days just
I think that's what it was. You would link the two calculators.
Wasteful.
Somebody
Megabytes
did have
of
to
data
start.
they use.
Somebody would have to start with the typing it in manually, and then it would be calculator to calculator from that point forward.
What the
That's how a lot of people learn to code.
You're
Was
lying.
typing things in and fucking it up and having to fix it.
I love how this is all somehow an offshoot of the airship mission from Infinite. That like we're sort of one step at a time. Somebody needs to someday make a in Indiana Jones the like red line,
the red line
tracing the cities. We need to have like topics that show these.
Troy, you did say Prince of Persia, and thus piqued my interest, but I don't remember in what context. You said Prince of Persia.
Prince of Persia and Karateka, those were like my go-to games. I remember so vividly coming back home, and to me, just like going level by level. I mean, it wasn't like I felt like games lasted longer, but I know going back now, it's like no, they weren't. You know, games were.
I feel like I played Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for a decade.
Years. Yeah,
I might have. Like, it feels like they were infinite.
I also don't feel like we played games for as long of set. Well, I was different. So if it was a PC game, I would play it in maybe shorter sessions over longer periods of time. If it was a console game, because of the way that I grew up, I didn't have a console. I had a PC because my dad was in that business, and so I could.
Your parents were anti you playing video games, right? Am I remembering that?
No. It wasn't that they were
That's
anti.
my parents.
Gotcha.
Your parents were?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to play console games as a kid. You waste your life on video games, which is something I've taken great pleasure in bringing up every Christmas.
Or
well, you're still doing it,
Mom and Dad.
I hope they're still just holding
there's some
their guns.
parenting advice built into that. Yeah.
When are you gonna get a real job, Mike? Because they're from Florida for some reason. It's stupid. But the console situation was such that all growing up, either I went to different friends' house who had different consoles. So like, so and so would have the Atari, and this person would have the Sega or whatever. Or if I was lucky, like if it was a special occasion or like my birthday, then we could go to the video store and I would rent the whole thing and bring that back home, and it would come with one game. I couldn't get another one. It would rent one game. And so I'd like made terrible mistakes. I was like, I'm going to rent Batman game. Poof. Just like, okay, or I'm just going to get,
Superman 64.
Superman 64 going to be the best game ever. Batman for me was like, wait a minute. So it's Castlevania with the Batman skin and terrible. Like, pretty much. Yeah.
Famously so, right? Yeah.
That's where I fell in, to playing Chrysalis. And that was like, nobody told me you're supposed to go play Legend of Zelda. I was like, I don't know, C comes before L, and then that's what I got. But those, I feel like if I had a console, I had 24 hours to play that as much as I could, and so I would just
We did the same thing,
go.
but it was Nintendo 64, so I was renting one game a week, and we were only allowed one, and they often had other people's save files on them. And sometimes I would just start from their save file, and I miss that a lot because I felt like I was experiencing, I'm sure I would have said this on the show before, I feel like I was experiencing somebody else's memories, and I didn't know who the last kid who played the game was.
Wow.
Yeah, so we just pick it up, and I'd see their name, and I'd like often see their name, not for every game, and then see where they were in this world, and like be like, what did this kid get up to? And I feel like I like found that so exciting every time before I would start my new game. Yeah, this
is why I buy used books that are severely discounted because
especially
they have writing
notes in them. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah,
I love it.
Now you just download them. It's the Play Watch Listen 2.0 with 4 other people in a decade is gonna be somebody being like, CDs? Used to video games on them? No.
Oh, I thought you were setting it for a bad joke. I was like, CDs
me,
what?
The thing that gets me is what Troy just said about not knowing, like, I really miss not knowing stuff or not being able to immediately find out stuff.
It sucks being an omniscient genius, is what you're saying.
I have a theory.
I miss being dumb.
I have a theory.
We all are. Like, we have with the internet, we all do. Like, I remember as a kid discovering Metal Gear Solid and having no idea what it was, playing it, and it being weird and surreal and just loving it. If I'd have been able to, like, Google 20 reviews of it before I played it, that would have been a very different experience.
That was how I played Inside.
We are all omniscient now, and it's weird. It's weird talking to someone who grew up without remembering the time before the internet because they just can't comprehend of the idea that you would like, have an argument in the pub. Yeah, so like we'd
and
have
you
an
could just
argument.
look it up. You're right.
You just you have to accept that you would know something. You'd have a disagreement with someone about a basic historical fact, and because neither of you could be asked to go to the library, you just accept that you didn't know. Like that's something.
I'm never going to learn this.
Yeah, I don't.
I will never know the answer.
Like I
How
said,
was that for you for Inside,
I have a theory.
Austin?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just that I bought it. I saw like a tweet from somebody that said this game is amazing or something, like really broad and totally non-spoilery, non-substantive in any sense.
I don't know anybody that bought it day one. I know everybody that bought it word of mouth because somebody told them you have to play this game, and there was no setup. It was just play this game.
I think it was day one.
I played it day one.
Oh, well, in this case, I think I don't remember when I played it, but it has to have been day one because I had no idea what I was getting into, other than I was familiar with Limbo, I guess. And that same thing actually happened with Her Story as well. And both of those were like magical experiences to me because I just stepped in going, the fuck is this?
I think Her Story was a recommendation for me as well.
Probably from me.
I was a little bit like that with Inscription.
Screamed from the rooftops.
Because I got a code from Devolver. I didn't know anything about the game, and I was like, it's
I recall that I recommended that.
Yeah, you recommended it.
I think I didn't play Her Story. I don't think until I was on the Baptist committee. There were so many games where like you have to play this, and I was like, okay, fuck.
That's what I love about doing the BAFTAs is it forces me to catch up on games, like doing judging.
Stuff I never heard of.
I'm working
dice as well. Yeah, it's so useful because you do miss stuff.
Totally. I was going to say I have this theory that because we can just Google shit, surely human invention is slowed down. Because we can just access a solution to almost every problem and see what somebody else has invented.
There is no necessity, so there is no mother of invention.
But that that
your
depends
at-home
if you think
craftiness has been lowered because you can just look it up and then nobody sparks an idea.
Is invention? So this is here we go. This is proper play watch list. I'm about to start like a half-hour debate, and I'm excited for it.
Get it.
Is invention the result of a genius moment of eureka? Or is it an iterative process where you build on the shoulder of others? Because you could argue Google makes it much easier and faster to become expert in the current state of something to the point where you can iteratively improve on it. So like you can learn how to do a new skill much faster than you used to be able to.
That's invention.
Or
I would say
I would say all invention is iterative based on you don't. It's a
depends how iterative, I suppose. But my thing is, I think that
let's play watch listen conversation now.
Invention is iteration, potentially, but I guess my logic is not that it's a spark of genius. Invention, at least would have come from a need. There's a need that you are trying to fill, and thus you come up with a solution to the problem. So you invent something.
So you think the internet reduces need?
No, it reduces your need to figure it out because somebody else already has. So you just go buy it. You just
but isn't that a net? That's a net win though, because that basically frees you up to actually.
But that frees you up to go and invent the thing that no one's invented yet, right?
Yeah, like you're not spinning your wheels doing a thing that someone else 2 towns over has already solved. Like you can Google it in 5 seconds, figure out the answer, and then now you're free to actually do something novel.
It's an efficiency of inventiveness, theoretically.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I know that from a sheer patent and whatnot standpoint, I remember reading once, this was probably 20 years ago that I read this too, which means it's probably already doubled since then. They said something like 95% of all inventions ever created in human history were made since the beginning of the 20th century because the rate of progress is so exponential. And
once you get everyone fed, once you've covered basic needs,
once survival is covered, people can make a fucking mesh Wi-Fi router.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi 6, as it were,
and it spreads, and it's going to spread across every dimension.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, this is why, like they say that's going to derail us into a totally different direction.
Is each individual iPhone a new invention? No. I would have thought the iPhone was the invention.
Right.
I would even vote that was an iteration.
The smartphone was the invention.
That's an iteration. I see where Mike's coming from. I remember this is going to seem like it's unrelated, but
the Wright brothers they weren't the first person to try and make a plane. They were just
Da Vinci was off doing that shit. 200
there were people down
before.
the road. They weren't they didn't wake up one morning and go, "I'm going to invent you."
400.
every like we deify, right? We take narratives and we simplify them. The light bulb, yes, was invented by one person, but then there were 20 others, and the guy who invented it isn't the guy you associate with that.
But is that not an iteration on the candle?
Well, I mean, it would. I assume someone burned a wire by
but
mistake.
They're different
right?
enough that it has to have been invented.
Well, I agree, but I see what Mike's saying. It's like every quote invention is somehow derivative of something. It's finding a better way to do something. Even the wheel is like a better means of transportation, because the square it's sold like hotcakes, but they haven't even invented hotcakes yet.
I was going to be like, what about the spear? But that's just an iteration on the stick.
Yeah. Guys, so put something pointy on the end of it. Here's what I was going to say.
Are you saying that, though, with the idea being that it is, like, I know this is not how you would phrase it, but to the sort of to the diminishment of the inventor, that theirs is not actually something totally new.
Yes.
No.
I had a conversation once. We were at a rap party, and I found myself at it was a rap party for a movie that
Lou Diamond Phillips.
Lou Diamond Phillips. I don't know if you guys remember this, but my very first thing that I did. It didn't matter. I was right across from Jimmy Fallon, and we were having this conversation.
Good name drop. Solid.
Well, kind of, but no, because I was talking to this person, and I kept noticing that Jimmy was just kind of listening in on our conversation. And we were talking about, is there any original music out? Or is everyone just basically trying to rewrite Hey Jude, as many times as they can? Like, what is there any original music? And I saw him kind of look over. I was like, Jimmy, what do you think? And he goes, what? And I was like, instantly mad. I think I've told the story before. I was like, is there any original music? He goes, Tom Waits, man. And went back to his conversation. I was like, yeah, but that's not necessarily pop music, but I think we have talked about this before, because Austin, I think,
but McCartney wouldn't credit Hey Jude as like an innovation. He'd point to 5 different things that influenced him.
Well, Paul McCartney would say that there is no White Album without Pet Sounds, and so I look at this and I say there's 8 notes in their respective sharps and flats, and they're doomed to be repeated. So what's novel about it is how you use those. The perfect example, that link that you sent me the other day, that's hilarious. What's this guy's name? Tim what?
Tim Minchin.
Tim Minchin.
Oh, yeah.
I like to sing an F sharp without even hearing the clip, just the setup and me hitting a note. People were like, oh, that's hilarious. That to me is novel and innovative. But I
for sure.
I think that
I'm annoyed because I have a Tim Minchin book downstairs. I missed the bookshelf. That was.
You got to bring it back, homie. You got walls. Make some floating shelves.
Walls.
That's
but I do think that I've never thought about it in terms of what Mike is talking about, but I guess there is Bible quote. There's nothing new under the sun. There's just an iteration or an innovation on something that makes it easier. So Google is an innovation on top of...
Yeah, my argument is it's fine to use your light bulb candle thing, which obviously skips a few steps, but let's use that because it's a nice illustration. Right. It is easier now to become a candle expert to the extent that you could...
Make a better light bulb.
With the light bulb, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is
There's more resources.
You can build on the shoulders of giants faster because you can go. I've got the full sum of human knowledge available to me if I know the right question to ask.
We've had this
which is what's
conversation
interesting
about
now
video
culturally
games before.
is 100%.
Like that video games, the idea of coming up with the idea and executing upon it the first time is the hardest. Everyone who does it after that has it way easier and thus is opened up for opportunity to do different
That's
things.
why games keep getting better and denser and cheaper to make, because we all learn from each other.
Is that true? Cheaper to make?
Cheaper to make?
Yeah. 100%.
So your budgets may be higher, but
cheaper to make the same. If you were trying to make a game, if you were trying to make Turok for the N64 right now, you could do it with 3 guys. That's what I'm saying. If you wouldn't,
one
because
person,
you'd have to,
upload that to Steam.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that because if you were trying to make a game that was equivalent to Turok now, you'd make a big AAA shooter. So
also,
you're right, costs go up.
Well,
but
even Unreal 5 is
cheaper.
In theory going to help a lot of devs with that
level
kind
the playing
thing.
Field.
Yeah.
I also would argue that budgets have, on average, come way down because there's 5 billion more teams than there used to be. And like,
how does that equate?
Well, because the number, like the the Sony and Ubisoft and Microsoft, et cetera, affiliated studios that have seen their budgets rise, it's not like there's 50,000 first-party Sony studios all of a sudden, whereas on Steam every day there are more games uploaded per day than 10 years ago per year. So I would say that
if you were to average, costs are probably way down.
Yeah, the industry-wide average budget of any game is probably substantially lower than it used to be.
I have no idea what the budget
democratization
of Ragnarok
process,
is. Right? It's probably fucking insane. I have no
idea.
$5
That is such an interesting thing to, especially all actors, perk up. And really, honestly, I think anyone that's trying to get into this industry, it goes back to the conversation that we were having, was it last week with no video? I can't remember. Where
I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was last week. I didn't see it.
Up and Adam.
The notion, up and Adam, baby. The notion that, just the assumption that games just make millions and millions of dollars is still a very sensitive subject. But I remember during the strike, that was the conception of actors coming into it. It's like, these guys are making millions of dollars. Where's my end? Where's my cut? And it's like, if you want that, then sure, we can have the whole argument of whether or not you deserve or not, or should have access to that. Absolutely. But there's a whole other subset of questions and conversations that we have to have in order for you to understand that. And the first thing that I would recommend to you is go to the developer. Just go spend a day at any dev anywhere making any game, and then come back and go, I still deserve more money than they're making. If you feel you
that's
do,
not.
Great,
can I be
great.
the socialist? That's not
Please.
what union. That's not what when a union.
We're not talking about union though. We're talking about residuals, which I think can easily
residuals.
conflict.
When workers ask to be paid more, that doesn't mean that they think they deserve more than the person next to them. They think the person next to them should also be asking for more.
They're
not looking to
very
take the
careful.
money.
That wasn't specifically. There was no awareness of, because the conversation that followed was, well, if we do this, then the people that are making that, we have to do that too. Then it was like, oh, then give that to them as well. But it wasn't it wasn't like, hey, let's rise all boats. It was, I want my ship to come in. And
it should be the rise all boats. Yeah, that's fair. I think as well, acting, it's an interesting one because there's a different role that an actor plays in a game than they do in a film in terms of what the end experience is for the consumer.
It's just
it's a nuanced thing, isn't it?
Yes, and that to me is why conversation and discourse is so important, and being able to educate yourself as far as like, these guys are not, the notion is like, they're driving Lamborghinis and they're driving Ferraris and they're making millions of dollars. Like, no,
not at the same time. That's really awkward. I tried it once. I
just couldn't do it.
Now.
The maintenance alone is.
I think there is
it's two steering wheels. That's the challenge. You're kind of stuck in the middle.
I think there's a broadly, poorly understood relationship between risk and reward. And there's these conversations around residuals and because there was a whole musicians union equivalent to that conversation as well.
Sure.
And I find that there's I don't know what to attribute it to, but there's this oddly. It just seems like people just don't understand who's risking the most, and therefore righteously deserving of the greatest potential windfalls in a given project. And I'll give you an example.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, here's a timely example, because I had somebody reach out to me to license some of my music for a thing they were making. And like, not a game, it was like a YouTube video, and I was like, sure, here's how much that will cost, and take it or leave it. And they said, I'll take it. And then they signed a contract, they used it, released it, then it severely underperformed from their hopes, and they came back to me and said, I'd like to cancel the deal. And I said, so wait a minute, you're asking that I have bought into your risk. Like why should I? I did nothing with this. I named a rate, you owe me that rate. Now, if I had stood to gain 1,000-fold if it was this huge viral hit, and now I took on nothing because it didn't do anything, that would have been fair. Like, because I took on no risk. Yeah, because I took on no risk, I can lay claim to absolutely nothing beyond that which was agreed to. That's your way of mitigating your risk, because you now have a hard cost that's fixed, and you know that we're one and done. You don't get to just change that deal after the fact.
And they could theoretically have done a different deal with you, which was tied to say views, right? They could have said, I'm going to pay you X per 1,000 views or whatever, and then they would have, but then you'd have been splitting that risk together with a bigger payoff.
There's also just, with residuals specifically to video games, there was never a, you buy the game. With something that is a, whether it be something that originally, like streaming right now is like, what do we do with that? And there's no, it's a really hard way to do additional payments unless, like Netflix, something that's on Sky will be on Netflix here, or vice versa, to where Netflix does things where it's called a third window, which means it's originally intended to be here, but it's also going to air here. And because of that, there's advertising dollars that are surrounding that viewing. We're gaining because we're showing this thing that you're in. There's an additional payment for that. Or we did something that shows up in the theaters, and now it's now viewing on HBO Max. So there is a second viewing of that, and there's sponsorship money or subscription money or ad money that's surrounded by that. Here's an additional payment. You buy the game, bam, one and done. There's no additional thing unless it becomes like games as a service. So I understand how
that's what the games industry spent the last 10 years trying to do, is work out how to make those revenue streams live on, right?
There is an interesting gray space there, because the way composer royalties work is from what's called public exhibitions, which would be your ASCAP or BMI, in the case of the UK, PRS. There's a different one per. The U.S. is the only country in the world that has multiple performance royalty organizations. All the rest is one per country, and they all partner with each other. I've probably explained this to some degree on the show in the past, so forgive that. But the way that it works is, this was started by Tin Pan Alley composers 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago, when artists would buy sheet music of their songs and then go sell out theaters performing their music, and the composer would never see a dime. And they'd go, well, it's not that I want to take all their money. Like, they are the performer, they did the thing, but surely I should get something if they're performing my music. So these organizations said, because it's a public exhibition, you have to pay a royalty. And the way that they worked it out was, it's actually the venue has to pay a license, so that the artist, it's not like they'll pass along their license fee as part of their agreement with the artist, presumably, like, some kind of cut off of ticket sales or whatever. But then they pay like an annual license to an ASCAP or a BMI, and then they go, okay, your song was played on June 1st, and another artist came in and played on our stage on August 2nd, or blah, blah, blah. And here is the check for your cut of those evenings. And as you can imagine, TV blew this into a whole new dimension, and it's how you end up with composers. If you're a Jonathan Wolff scoring Seinfeld, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars of back end money, because every time it plays on TV, you're owed a royalty. And this is the kind of thing that is never off TV. It's 24 hours a day.
Or Law and
somewhere.
Order.
Or Law and Order, Mike Post.
That's all you need.
Exactly. So the thing that's weird, sorry, just real quick to finish up the thread there, is that, of course, all the composers, like, I'm a member of ASCAP, but because I overwhelmingly work in games, I get very little from them for that work, because, as you said, it's one and done. There have been a few random exceptions. There was some Hulu show that licensed, the character on screen was playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate. So I did manage to get 12 cents from the fraction of a second that you theoretically could hear my music. Nice. Although I found the episode and I turned it so loud, and I was like, boy, like, it's there, but holy hell, is that quiet. But interestingly, in the UK, by law, they've passed a law that is unique to the rest of the world, that PRS and Sony made a deal that sales on the PlayStation Network in the UK are now under the banner of public exhibition, like showing a TV show. So PlayStation games that once they came to that agreement, I basically they reached out to me and were like, can you help us? We're basically auditing records to see what games on PlayStation have been sold, and we want to get you because it was like the Banner saga suddenly. Now, it wasn't worth like a ton of money, but if that became industry standard practice, you're basically, I can't imagine that it would. I think the UK is sort of far more progressive in this way than a lot of other countries, and like aggressively going after those income streams, because that's not the case here. But the other big wiggle area that ASCAP and BMI and all those others are looking to go, surely there's something substantive to be made here, but it's really dicey territory. It was, of course, Twitch and things comparable to that.
That's the main thing. Is I don't want that to happen. I don't believe that that's the move, because what you end up doing is putting a stranglehold on what's truly good for the industry, right? There's more people that are playing games than ever before, and a lot of those people, or more people that are experiencing the gaming culture, who may end up just going, like, I know so many people are like, I'd never played games, I watched them, but then I started playing them. I want that to be an entry point. It's the same reason why most publishers and developers are like, we're not going to sue you or nickel and dime you for playing our game on Twitch, because you're now our marketing.
I was just talking to an Australian girl yesterday who's a streamer who started playing video games because she was watching PewDiePie play Alien Isolation and really enjoyed it, and that was her start into playing video games. And I imagine that like people have similar stories with people like Jacksepticeye or Markiplier or whatever. Like, I didn't realize that was that much of a reality, that is an entry point for a lot of people.
It reaches to a completely different audience, and I feel like that's what our job is. I want people. It's the same reason why Neil is, and Craig Mazin are making something that was shot, scored, released, everything in a cinematic way in a completely different format, is because he believes, they both believe now, that the story of The Last of Us is good enough that it should go to meet the people that will never pick up a controller.
It's true.
And I don't feel we should be exclusive. I think that we should be as, reaching across however many aisles we can.
The thing about Austin's point about risk and reward, I think is very interesting for actors especially. Like, obviously actors get paid, this is a generalization, but for a successful network TV show or film, get paid a lot. But they also kind of carry the weight of that thing more than a lot of people behind the scenes, often more than a director. So if you're an actor and you're in a very good film,
especially
it can blow up your career. Right. Yeah. But if the movie's bad, you will be made fun of forever associated with that bad film, even if it's bad outside of your performance. So,
and you're bringing your reputation to the table for the marketing
much
as well.
More than like even the writers.
You're bringing value.
There's also, we've talked about this.
In your game makes a statement about what level of game you're making, what that game is. That therefore,
for good or for bad.
For good or for bad. It means you're releasing a video game of choice, isn't it? No, but genuinely, like there's a value and a cachet which has to factor into the pricing of what Troy charges for his time. It's not just he's not just doing a job. He is also a marketing choice as well. Often voice actors in games come out of the marketing budget as well as the development budget, because we know exactly what you're saying. We know that there's value to an actor beyond the execution of the job at hand. So I also sometimes I've certainly seen that happen.
I have to make decisions, believe it or not, where I do have to be judicious in the jobs that that I choose to take for various reasons. And number one, it could be like, I can't do this game because if I do this game, that precludes me from doing this game. And
opportunity cost,
yeah. So it's like, I really want to hold out for this one. This may never happen, but if I do this, this means 100% that I can't do this. So
every actor looking at a minor role in a Marvel movie.
Like, give me Daredevil, baby. Give me Daredevil.
Didn't I'm forgetting the actor's name, so disregard. Doctor Strange.
Right. Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yes, Benedict Cumberbatch said that he did that. He was offered a smaller role and then was like, I'll wait for something bigger, and worked out pretty well for him, because otherwise you can't really come back.
My thing is not even bigger. Like, if Daredevil were to show up in a Spider-Man game and all it would ever be is just a cameo, that would be great. I want to see the Daredevil game made, but aside from that, it's like, I wouldn't want to play Spider-Man.
Well.
I couldn't play Spider-Man. But there's...
Give me your best teenage boy voice, Troy.
I can't do it.
You can't do young.
I have been that goes to like the Yuri Lowenthal's and Max Mittelman's and Charlie Schlatters and all those guys. I can't do it. I always just sound like I'm just trying to do that. Like even Nolan, his like Blaze voice. Fuck. Yeah. Well, then you go female.
Yeah.
We can get to that conversation too.
Yeah, the amount of female actresses playing young boys is, especially in anime, it's like so many of them.
It's like Shakespearean, man.
Isn't Bart Simpson? Yeah, Bart
Simpson. That's how.
I will add one last little thing, just as another for actors coming up. No matter your situation, there's never a reason to take a role if it costs you your integrity. So there's a couple of people that have approached me. This is like, should I do this? Because I'm afraid that if I say yes to this, that it could preclude me from doing another job. If you are meant to do this, then you're going to do it, and that thing will not be the thing that makes or breaks you. So there was a situation this week where something came down my way, and I was like, I feel like you should ask this person first. And they're like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I think you should ask this person first." And that person ended up being like, "Thank you. That should go to me," kind of thing. And my agent was like, "I'm just want to let you know, like, for what it's worth, I'm really proud of you." Like, and I'm like, I'm glad that I have an agent in my corner that's going to back me up when I say that stuff, because I've been in that situation before years ago when all of a sudden every VO actor saw these breakdowns coming down for Futurama, and they were trying to recast everybody. And it was being used as a bargaining chip so that they could say, we could get these people. We already could recast right now. And so people like John DiMaggio and the whole cast would kind of be screwed. And to this day, there are people that audition for those roles because they're like, a gig is a gig, and people remember. And I was new in town, and even then I was like, no way. And my first session with John DiMaggio, he was like, I heard about you. I was like, how? He was like, well, I just heard that you walked away from those auditions. And he goes, I just want to let you know, I really appreciate that. So just be cautious. Like,
integrity.
It's hard out here, and it's going to cost you, but it always will pay into dividends to never fuck anybody over just to get a job.
I mean, that applies to everything, and also applies to your situation, but I think that applies to like every vocation, right? Like, I don't know how that relates to writing
industry
exactly,
as well is
but
so connected.
Nah, fuck people over.
Everyone
if you're a writer, fuck them over.
You will
fuck them over.
Fuck them over. Fuck over right over. But it's such a small industry. Like if you build a bad reputation, then that will follow you. And,
Preach.
Yeah.
I spent years overcoming a lot of bad behaviors that people still assumed. Well, I mean, you like the first time we walked, you're like, I think I know who this guy is, and it took you and I working together. You're like, okay. He's not a total prick.
With me? You're talking about me? You're talking about me? Yeah. I didn't think you were a prick.
I didn't think you were a prick. It just like there was an assumption to where it was like, I'm not taking words out of your mouth. I mean, this is
no one with hair this good.
I was going to say, I was like,
I remember the quote.
Troy, you're also very handsome, so people are immediately going to assume things.
I like this episode.
That was the quote, though, right? That was the quote. Was it? I remember saying it now. I was like, I figured Troy was famous, and that's why he was. But then I worked with you, and I realized, like, you're a pro. Like, is that the? I can't remember the exact word.
Something like that. It was like kind of like people just hire him because he's the guy right now. And then it was like, no, he actually gives a shit and like comes in and works hard. And
and to be clear, I never said that to anyone, but I came in with that bias for sure.
How true, just as a closing thought, since I know we got to run.
I was wrong, by the way, audience. I was very wrong.
I'm curious how true it is, how many people do just kind of waltz through, because I have to say, I know I can't
My whole career, mate.
I can't say any names yet, but we've obviously been working on this musical Stray Gods, and our cast is just stupid in this game. It's unbelievable cast.
It's a mean thing to say about your cast. They try their hardest, Austin. That's kind of unprofessional.
Well, no, that's actually the point I was going to make. They actually, down to the last person, have tried their hardest, and all, like, for all of them, this is not, like, it could even just be a short stint in the studio because their character is reasonably small or whatever, and some of these are huge names. And it would be easy to make these assumptions like they're doing us a favor. They're going to come in. It's going to be super path of least resistance. Like just whatever, quick, easy cash for an afternoon or a couple afternoons or whatever. And none have given that impression. That's the thing. That's why I was curious. How true is this notion that, oh, you know, they're a big name, so if they do your thing, they're just going to waltz in, like, not really give a shit.
I don't know that exists in games a lot.
It seems really rare.
It certainly doesn't in Hollywood. Seen it.
I've
experienced it. I've definitely seen there are people I've been lucky with the people I've worked with. I'm not throwing anyone on the bus, but like you definitely do encounter the big deal who knows they're a big deal and will therefore just kind of coast on it. 100%. I've met.
But I do feel that now, by and large, for the most part, if there is even a name that's in a game, it's because they're a gamer, and they like you take like Rahul, who would come in and be like, I'm going to throw the same amount of energy, preparation, work, craft, and everything behind being in.
I don't know that Rahul did that with Fortnite. I'm being honest.
He's very passionate. Like he's incredible about the work.
Yeah, but he's incredibly. Like, yeah, you're going to give it. He would view it as a role.
Way that I admire.
Yeah,
he was great to work with. Really great to work with.
You worked on Fortnite with him?
He is in Fortnite. He's the Origin, and I keep saying you should start introducing yourself as Fortnite's the Origin, because as it turns out, it's a big deal, and we don't know what's happening.
I love the fact that the reason why I'm in Fortnite...
That would probably be his most viewed role, right? Because
for sure.
It's just so massive.
Yeah.
Like Donald Mustard... I'm Jonesy because Donald Mustard was like, how can I get Troy Baker in my game? I'm like, well... You're licensing really big properties. I don't think you need me in my game. He's like, yeah, just see if I can't do it. It's like, what if we just retrofitted Troy's voice onto Jones? And I was like, yeah, give me into Fortnite.
Did the character have a voice before?
No.
Oh.
So then all of a sudden it was like, we're
John
gonna have Jones.
DiMaggio played him before. It's really
I was like,
doesn't
fuck you, already
Troy
gave
now.
you your one Futurama. I'm coming for you, Bender. I'm coming for you.
I'm sure I've said this before, but I think like Santa Monica Studio has hundreds and hundreds of people. I do not feel like there is a single person at the studio who is dead weight or thinks they're a big shot and is lazy about it. I just think you'd get fired. I just don't think it would work.
I don't think you'd
show
up.
I think as an
it
industry,
hard.
we're a lot better at that now than we used to be. I think, and I've heard the similar about Santa Monica from the outside. Like, there's 100%. There was a period when I came into the industry, there were a lot of lazy fuckers, basically. And unfortunately, the industry. Well, no, fortunately, I guess the industry moved on, and we definitely. The expectations are now higher. Like, and most
people
studios,
I worked with in press who sucked, who like slept through appointments and didn't show up because they got drunk, and other people had to fill with them.
Common
they
now
didn't
as
get
well.
fired.
But that's less common. I think generally work ethic and respect for your co-workers have just become very important in a way that they weren't when I started my career. Which is
I
great.
see games being in the space where TV was like 5 years ago. Whereas like all of a sudden
professionalizing, right?
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but it's also like it becomes the fertile ground where I've seen writers who were working in TV going, this is the medium that I want to be working in. But the cinematographers as well. It's like I wanted to do film, but man, there's just some really cool opportunities for us to do something inside here. So I definitely believe that the game space will be where people are coming to, and therefore it's their dream. This isn't a side gig.
You have to really want it to succeed.
Well, especially at Santa Monica.
And you have to want it to play.
Like, 100%.
A show you would hang on to for like maybe like a movie, you're going to be there for 2-3 months. A show you may be working on it for like 3 or 4 months maybe. No one is going to be like, yeah, I'm going to sign on for 2.5 years or 3 years or 5 years of work and turn down other gigs just so that I can work on this. They're like, this is where your passion is. So
it's true.
Right.
Before we go today, this feels like a terrible idea. I feel like I'm rewarding bad behavior. I have a gift that I'm going to share with you. It feels like I'm doing it after you've just...
You're doing a very bad job of raising us.
We made happy accidents. We Bob Ross the fuck out of that episode. Everyone talked about how great it was at the very end.
Okay, I have to go.
That was not by design.
It was definitely good that we got the reaction to the realization that there had been
on tape. Yeah.
I 100%. Don't think there's any video.
Can you see it?
Uh-oh.
Hey! Oh my god! Oh my god!
What does it look like?
Oh, my background's been updated to the new location.
Okay.
Man,
so
this
excited.
is fucking
everyone
awesome.
can see this. All right. It should have audio. Let me know if it doesn't.
Sure,
this is supposed to be for episode 100, but 107. Who cares? Same thing. Okay.
I use a lot of towels, and what I will do,
he's a single swipe. Like Get out of the shower. One pass. Throw it away. Another one.
Burn it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Burn the towel.
He has to buy them in bulk from Costco each week. You know.
I will take a towel.
Never waste the
I'll take the smaller towels because you get like a washcloth and you get like a hand towel, and then you take those and you put them in another towel. That's what the robe is for.
I like the Thomas was alone shirt.
I will fold up those like in a nice little like hobo's bag kind of thing, so that and I will put those into the tub so that they walk in. They don't have to like gather up all these things. It's just literally just grab these. And I saw them. They do this with the sheets. They take them and they bundle up and they kind of do a loose tie. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that for them. And so
my legs not that hairy.
Oh, this is great. This guy just didn't leave all of the towels.
But it's like 10 kilos because of the amount of towels that you use, so nobody can lift
pretty
it.
heavy.
For them to
And
try to
they're
pick up.
so
Like,
All of them wet. All of them sodden with
I do
you're
dry off
reminding me-
in the shower while the shower is still going.
You're reminding me of an old.
It's not getting dry.
You're reminding me of, there was an
Baker.
old.
Lots
It
of
was an old
surface
Dilbert
areas, lots of
comic.
water, lots of surface tension. He comes out of that shower.
he's a
red.
moist
It's a
man.
nipple.
Yeah.
I also, one of my
That
favorite things about that is
art.
we cut off Austin even in that repeatedly.
Oh,
I want to know what you were
it's
talking
beautiful.
about with this old Dilbert comic so bad.
Oh, I have no idea.
No. That's going to be in our 200th episode when you do the Who Said This? Like
Yeah.
Dilbert. Austin's going to go, that sounds like
like
a
me."
reference that I would make.
Very big
I
thank
really
you to
think-
Matt Ringstead for animating
Cheers,
that
Matt.
for us. He's super
Lovely stuff.
talented, and it's
I
so
think
fun.
definitely
Very cool.
my favorite part of that is Troy trying to dry while under the water in the shower.
Not, by the way, not untrue.
It's just
Not
so
untrue.
funny.
And the frustration, it's just like just beating is like, why? Just this paging Sisyphus. I was like, I don't give a fuck.
Next time that an episode's
Paging
recorded without
Sisyphus. There's
video,
a podcast name.
I'll give Matt like $10,000 and have him animate the whole episode, and then we'll have a little feature film.
Kind of want to make a
I'll
game with
bankrupt
them.
myself.
Kind of want to make a game with them.
We might be able to figure something
Hey, on
out.
Patreon,
He's great.
we will. I will take no money if we can make a play, watch, listen game. I will take $0.
The amount of requests we've had for that are quite large. Just being somebody who's making a game, I keep being like, not that simple, folks. Not that simple. Though we could do a little game jam type thing.
we could do a game jam. We
Yeah.
could 100% do a little
Make
game
that
jam.
happen.
I think that would be
I'd
honestly
like to
fun
point out
to
I
do.
suggested
It would
that
be
like
fun to do.
6,000 years
You
ago.
did
All right,
suggest it.
well,
I'll give you
it took
credit
us
for that
that
one,
long.
Austin, as long as you give me inscription, you piece of shit.
I think that we should make that an episode is that we do a game jam and we just get to see the shitty ideas we come up with.
That'd be great. I'm down.
I'm down.
In any
and if you
case.
can go and make it, then you make a better
This
game
sounds
than
like
we
a
did.
bit of a busman's holiday for me, I'll be honest, Troy.
Happy 107. We have video.
Feeling every bit.
We will continue to have video. I love that you guys mentioned at the end that I would be so proud of you, and then you
So proud.
realized.
So smug. We were so smug in that moment.
For the record, the folder that I save all my audio in, Adam. Never changed it.
Mike's
I
is
stand
the
in
most
solidarity.
helpful
Wait, yours says that
because
too?
he does the date.
I don't
Damn
think I've
straight.
ever noticed
No,
that.
his file
Damn straight.
names are not that. He's saying the
My file names
folder.
are proper, but the folder, still Adam.
I have a
Also,
good
the reason
system.
we
It's
didn't go
easy
with
for
Adam.
me, it's easy
I'll
for
take
you,
what I
it
can
works
get.
well.
Yeah, the reason we didn't go with Adam is because it means nothing to anybody. It's bad marketing, was my logic. That when you see it doesn't translate to
disagree.
any information.
To be fair, I don't disagree. I'm just petty. I just want to win. I don't actually
Yeah.
think it's a better name. It's a terrible name.
Well, I still have fondness for
At
it.
least one person on Twitter goes, "The goggles do nothing," or I think it was a comment on the video. But yes,
Was the person Arnold Schwarzenegger? Is that who
They
was
do
commenting
nothing.
on this?
no, they were
goggles do nothing.
They were the Simpsons version of Schwarzenegger, which is McBain, Rainier Wolfcastle.
Get it?
I don't know what he's talking about.
You
In
did
any
Up
case,
and Hell out of this episode.
Up and Adam is a Simpsons reference. Come on.
yeah.
Who am
See, I
with
didn't
here?
even know that. Of course, you tried to fucking sneak Simpsons into the name of the show.
Well, we would have gotten sued our first episode, so way to go.
I will put the animated short up on the channel on Saturday, the day after the podcast goes up as well, so you can see it without our little faces laughing on the side. I'm Alana, I'm a video game writer. That's Mike Bivell. He's a video game director. You're all currently below me, so then that's also Troy Baker, just a bit further down.
Just as a fact of
video
life.
game actor. That's Austin Wintry, the whole way down the bottom. Composers, just
Jeez.
way down.
That's where they belong. That's where they belong.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.